The grandfather brought his grandson back from Seoul to the countryside, but he was mistaken for a thief by the patrolling policewoman Ziying, who tightly restrained him. The man took out his documents to prove his identity, and on it, Ziying saw a familiar name, which stunned her for a moment. Just then, the backup police arrived, and without listening to explanations, grabbed the man's arm and struck him hard. The man fainted immediately, and they sent him to the nearest veterinary clinic. Fortunately, the man was not seriously hurt and soon woke up. The man's name was Jiwoo, and he was actually the grandson of the director of this veterinary clinic. Soon after, his grandfather called, saying that he and Jiwoo's grandmother were going on a world trip, and they were leaving the clinic in Jiwoo's care. After giving instructions, he hung up immediately, not giving Jiwoo a chance to refuse. Ziying looked carefully at Jiwoo's face, as if searching for a familiar shadow, her heart filled with expectation. But Jiwoo had already forgotten her, and his eyes carried some disappointment. After that, she returned the wallet to Jiwoo and invited him into her car, as they needed to rush to Uncle Zhao's house to handle an urgent matter. In the car, Ziying casually probed Jiwoo, asking if this wasn't his first time coming to Shidong and when was the last time he came, hoping he could recall past memories and remember her. But she got distracted while driving and accidentally hit Shang Xian on the roadside, knocking him down into the field. Ziying felt guilty in her heart, but her mouth was still sharp and unforgiving. When Ziying and Jiwoo arrived at Uncle Zhao's house, Uncle Zhao had caught a stray dog that had been stealing his chickens with a bone clipper and asked Ziying to deal with it. But Jiwoo, being a veterinarian, insisted on treating the dog first, otherwise it would never be able to walk again. Uncle Zhao strongly disagreed, saying that even if cured, it would still be a stray and would come back to steal chickens again. Ziying also felt the dog should be handed over to the stray dog shelter, since as a policewoman she must protect the villagers' property from damage. Jiwoo explained that if the dog was sent to the shelter, it would surely be euthanized. He said he would first keep the dog in the clinic for temporary care. Saying this, Jiwoo went to find a cage to put the dog inside. After examination, the dog's leg was not fractured, but Ziying still looked at Jiwoo with resentment in her eyes. Just then, Ziying received a call that Uncle Goat's goat was in heat, and she and Jiwoo had to rush over to help. To get there quickly, Ziying led Jiwoo through a shortcut, but this road was clearly very difficult for him. Jiwoo arrived at Uncle Goat's place covered in mud. When he saw the goat in heat, he instinctively retreated in fear. Ziying quietly blocked his way from behind with her foot, her face showing a smug expression. To display his manliness, Jiwoo had no choice but to grit his teeth and charge forward, wrestling with the goat in heat, while Ziying gave him moral support from the side. When Jiwoo returned home in a messy state, he couldn't believe what he had gone through in just one day. Before he could even catch his breath, the enthusiastic neighbor aunties rushed in with large bags of pickles, not treating themselves as outsiders at all. But Jiwoo did not like this at all, and he told the aunties clearly that if they didn't knock before entering. After saying this, the air suddenly became quiet. When the aunties left, Ziying told him that if he didn't want to be broken into again, he had to remember to lock his doors and windows. The city boy who came to the countryside to be a veterinarian could not even catch a single goat in 2 hours, collapsed on the ground exhausted and questioning his life. With sweat all over his head, he returned home, only to see a child trying to sneak into his yard. Jiwoo stopped the child, saying that he had clearly locked the door, and asked him how he had gotten in. Jiwoo felt very displeased and gave Xuandong a heartfelt lecture, telling him that without the owner's permission, one cannot just enter someone else's house. The child, having grown up, had never seen an adult take things so seriously, and his face was full of grievance. Just then, Ziying happened to arrive. When she learned that Xuandong had done this more than once, Jiwoo stopped him again and gave him another heartfelt lecture. As Xuandong walked out of the yard, he couldn't help but complain. Jiwoo went to the clinic and only then learned that today he needed to vaccinate Uncle Yang's piglets. Ziying also saw this news on the calendar, and she became anxious, pacing back and forth in the office. She needed a reason to show up at the pig farm and see Jiwoo. So Ziying called Uncle Yang. She told him that this time it was the grandson of the director who would be giving the vaccinations. And since he was young and strong, he probably didn't need Uncle Yang's help. But then she changed her tone and said that there were many pigs, and pigs were not as easy to handle as dogs, so she was worried he wouldn't be able to manage it well. Even the bureau chief didn't understand what medicine she was selling in her gourd. Jiwoo, seeing such a large scene in the pigsty for the first time, froze on the spot, completely unaware that Ziying was already standing beside him. Giving vaccinations to so many piglets for the first time, Jiwoo seemed somewhat at a loss. Ziying teased him, asking if he had already forgotten how to give injections. Hearing this, Jiwoo couldn't quite understand why Ziying always ridiculed him. Could it be that someone who looked like him had once owed her a debt? Unexpectedly, Ziying followed the thread and said that indeed, she was owed money by someone who looked exactly like him, and that person had completely forgotten about it. After sharing a kiss, the two of them busied themselves with the piglets, and then they rode bicycles together along the country road, passing through a peach grove filled with ancient stones, until they arrived at a cafe. Soon, Shang Xian also arrived. He was the owner of both the cafe and the peach grove. Shang Xian said they had met yesterday, when Jiwoo was sitting in the car and he himself was lying in the rice field. Returning to the clinic, Jiwoo praised the coffee endlessly, still savoring it. He asked the nurse what kind of person Shang Xian was. The nurse said that Shang Xian was a man who could do anything and had a very good personality. When it came to first impressions, Jiwoo asked the nurse if his own impression shouldn't be too bad, perhaps looking like someone who would default on debts. He then asked about Ziying, why she always appeared everywhere. At the mention of Ziying, joy overflowed on the nurse's face. The nurse said that on the outside, Ziying looked like a policewoman, but in reality, she was Zidong's mobile service center. Wherever there was a man, there she was. She was a warm-hearted person. Jiwoo quickly rode off on his old bicycle and rushed to the sheep pen, starting a frantic sheep-catching session. Meanwhile, Ziying was handling another troublesome matter. A man wearing a baseball cap had stolen an old lady's pocket money, and this person had already committed multiple crimes. Ziying suspected it might be a local high school student. Soon, Xuandong provided her with an important clue. He had just seen the thief slip into a house. Ziying decided to arrest him on the spot, with both the man and the stolen goods in hand. She quietly opened the door in front of the house. When Jiwoo learned there was a thief inside, he and Ziying entered together to catch him. Ziying quickly subdued the thief with a reversal hold, but the thief was too strong and shoved her aside before fleeing. Jiwoo rushed forward to stop him, and the two men fell to the ground. Fortunately, the backup police arrived in time, and together with Ziying and Jiwoo, they managed to subdue the thief. Ziying and Jiwoo had been secret childhood friends, but more than 10 years later, when Jiwoo returned, he had completely forgotten about her. He even misunderstood the encounters Ziying carefully arranged as if they were maliciously intended. Heartbroken, Ziying went to Shangxian to confide in him. She said that all those treasured memories from the past seemed to her like wealth, but to him, they were probably just a joke. Wenyan Shangxian replied that from the time he was born until now, he had never forgotten anything that had happened, so his memories were never laughable. The next morning, Jiwoo and Ziying met again. Xuandong could tell the two of them had quarreled. He turned back to look at the dull man, wondering what mistake he had made this time. But Ziying told Xuandong they hadn't quarreled. She was just trying her best to give Dr. Shou some space alone. Only that way did she feel most comfortable because, after all, he was just a guest who would soon leave this place. Jiwoo traveled far to Machingli for a house call, panting and sighing that his grandfather had really worked hard all these years. At that moment, he saw the police car that Ziying often drove and quickly went over to check if she had parked there. Just then, An Junjin saw him. Jiwoo greeted him while glancing backward, and An Junjin told Jiwoo that Ziying had come with him, but she had a sudden task and had to leave early. After Jiwoo finished examining the cow, on his way out, he met Ziying together with Aunt Ma. Aunt Ma asked Ziying if her mother had never returned even once after abandoning her all those years ago. On the surface, Aunt Ma seemed to be showing concern, but in reality, she was sprinkling salt into Ziying's wounds. This made Ziying very sad, yet Aunt Ma did not stop. Turning to Jiwoo, she said something else, leaving Ziying's face full of embarrassment as she turned around and left. Far mountains, green grass, and a wounded heart of Ziying remained. Because the road back to the village was too long, Jiwoo wanted to lend his bicycle to Ziying, but she refused. Watching her back as she left, Jiwoo also felt a mix of emotions in his heart. Though the two of them walked farther and farther apart, their hearts grew closer and closer. Back at the clinic, Jiwoo thought about buying his grandfather a truck so that going on house calls would not be so tiring. The nurse suggested he ask Shangxian for help, since in the past his grandfather often borrowed a car from him. Jiwoo also wanted to inquire more about Ziying, but the words stuck in his throat and he swallowed them back. Jiwoo went to Shangxian's cafe and once again ran into Ziying, who was there helping out in the peach orchard. Before the two of them had time to greet each other, Fat Aunt interrupted. She assumed Jiwoo was the helper Ziying had brought along and immediately told them to help. Every year at this time was the season of insect outbreaks, and they had to quickly cover the peaches before the pests spread. If the peaches weren't bagged, then the hard work of an entire year would be wasted. For Ziying, who had grown up in the countryside, this task was very simple and skilled, but Jiwoo appeared rather clumsy doing it. Ziying told Jiwoo that peach trees had very short roots, so when putting the bags on, he needed to wrap the branch and the peach together. The entire interaction between the two was witnessed by the aunties. Aunt Hu hoped that they could end up together, but Fat Aunt strongly opposed it. In her heart, Shangxian and Ziying were the eternal couple. She reminded Shangxian to keep an eye on things. As for Jiwoo, he had another purpose for coming here. He wanted to buy an idle truck from Shangxian to give to his grandfather. Shangxian, however, raised the price excessively, obviously jealous and nitpicking because of what had just happened. Ziying took advantage of the situation, saying she would take Jiwoo to the neighboring town to buy one, and that the two of them could pretend to be husband and wife. Since couples buying for starting a business could get a discount, Shangxian immediately became anxious. Ziying then hugged Guoba to show Jiwoo the new skills she had learned. Guoba's leg had almost healed, and Ziying planned to adopt him. She had once raised a pet dog and had a lot of experience, and that dog had also been given to her by Jiwoo when they were children. As Jiwoo spent more time with Ziying, he discovered that she had an animal-like personality, not only getting along well with people, but also blending in perfectly with animals. He saw in Ziying shining qualities that he had never noticed in anyone before. In the town, whenever people had a problem, they always went to Ziying for help. Jiwoo asked her if she didn't find it exhausting. Ziying said she liked being busy, and she enjoyed the feeling of being needed. Shangxian had once said she loved to show off, but Ziying felt that Shangxian had no right to criticize her. She thought he was even more exaggerated than she was. Jiwoo said that Ziying should feel very happy since Shangxian cared for her so much, but Ziying said that after all, she and Shangxian had been together since birth, and they would certainly continue being being together until the very end. Just as she said this, Shang Xian appeared. Shang Xian told Jiwoo that there was a pest called the peach fruit moth, the worst kind of pest that destroyed peaches. So he hung pheromone traps larger than the moths themselves to interfere with their mating and egg laying. Standing from the perspective of the insects, he said, they would certainly feel furious. Recently, he had started to understand the insects' feelings, wanting to fall in love but being constantly interfered with. Jiwoo's arrival had made him feel threatened. Even when they parted, Shang Xian still had a burning fire of jealousy in his heart. The nurse said he noticed Jiwoo was different from before. He must have met someone he liked. At that moment, Ziying suddenly ran in to say that Guoba was missing. They got on their bicycles and searched separately in the village. Very soon, Jiwoo discovered Guoba's tracks, but no matter how much he chased, Guoba refused to stop. In the end, Jiwoo was led into a certain part of the forest. When Jiwoo saw the puppy, he realized that Guoba had become a father. Jiwoo wanted to reach out his hand to touch, but he didn't notice the mother dog, fiercely protective of her pups, charging directly at him. Jiwoo not only lost his contact lenses, but also had his arm scratched. For now, they had no choice but to return for treatment. Ziying held the dog with one hand and Jiwoo with the other, leading him carefully down the mountain road. Suddenly, Jiwoo received a call from Fifth Aunt. His family's cow was having a difficult labor. After examination, they found that the calf was stuck in the mother cow's pelvis. Jiwoo asked Fifth Aunt to fetch a long rope, and together he and Ziying pulled the calf out from the cow's belly. From their strained expressions, it was clear how exhausting the task was. Fortunately, after much effort, the calf was safely delivered. Ziying praised Jiwoo, saying that not only was he handsome, but he could also deliver calves. To thank them, Fifth Aunt decided to host a feast. She invited not only her neighbors, but also Shang Xian. The first thing Shang Xian did upon arriving was to separate Ziying and Jiwoo. Thinking about it, one's gaze cannot hide feelings. Fifth Aunt served roasted meat and insisted Jiwoo eat more, but Jiwoo said he wasn't good at eating meat. Immediately, Shang Xian stuffed a large mouthful into his own mouth, saying a real man should eat meat in big bites. Then Fifth Aunt brought out her family's secret medicinal wine. Ziying told Jiwoo that the wine not only tasted good, but was also very beneficial for men. After 3 rounds of drinking, Jiwoo and Ziying walked home together under the bright moon. A man and a woman alone in the night. Something unexpected was bound to happen. Shang Xian said he wasn't at ease with Ziying leaving together with someone curious about the effects of medicinal wine. He said all men think the same way, always using alcohol as an excuse to do the things they want to do, but normally don't dare. Hearing this, Jiwoo simply said he would leave first, entrusting Ziying to Shang Xian, this female friend, subtly mocking that Ziying only treated Shang Xian as a friend. Jiwoo said he would just go home and sleep peacefully, but Shang Xian's next words stunned him. Shang Xian couldn't help but confess his feelings to Ziying. He worried that if he didn't say it, Ziying might never know he liked her. Since Shang Xian had always been by her side, Ziying might never have thought about changing their relationship. Troubled alone in love made Shang Xian feel very wronged. Ziying asked Shang Xian if he wasn't afraid that they might no longer be friends because of this. Shang Xian said their relationship shouldn't just be one of either friends or lovers. To him, Ziying was both a friend and a woman. If Ziying could become his, of course that would be best, but if not, they would still be friends. Ziying would still be his neighbor and family. For them, the awkwardness of a failed confession would only last a moment, compared to the time they would spend together in the future. Later at the cattle farm, Jiwoo came to check on the calf born yesterday. He said the calf was weak and needed careful care. Back at the clinic, the nurse told Jiwoo that Ziying had just borrowed a cage and also repaired Jiwoo's bicycle before leaving. At that moment, Jiwoo realized Ziying must have gone to the back mountain. Sure enough, Jiwoo found Ziying there. He told her she should find someone to help so that she wouldn't get hurt. Back at the clinic, Jiwoo examined the puppies and told Ziying they were healthy and the clinic would temporarily care for them. Then Jiwoo also helped Ziying treat her wounds. After examination, they found that Billy had only eaten something bad and upset his stomach. Then Shang Xian called Jiwoo outside for talk. At that moment, Jiwoo learned that Ziying had been injured. Shang Xian told Jiwoo that in the morning, Xuandong had been frightened when he saw Billy foaming at the mouth and called Ziying. Because Xuandong had cried so sadly, Ziying hurried out and forgot that her bicycle was broken. Jiwoo's own bicycle had fallen into the field the night before, causing a part to fall off. So Ziying, in an emergency, had taken a part from her own bicycle. Shang Xian said that Ziying was the kind of warm-hearted person who would rather wrong herself than refuse to help others. He said that recently he kept flipping through the calendar, counting down the days until Jiwoo returned to Seoul. He hated that Jiwoo was always appearing by Ziying's side. Jiwoo would soon leave, and leaving meant he would not take responsibility for Ziying. Shang Xian did not want Ziying to be hurt again. Jiwoo came to the clinic bringing the lunch that Fifth Aunt had prepared, only to see Ziying with silver needles stuck in her leg, while also cutting herbs with her hands. Worried that this would affect her recovery, he became angry at Ziying's behavior. Turning in anger, Jiwoo left. Yet his words left Ziying feeling a kind of grievance she had never felt before. Xuandong came to the clinic to visit Billy and thanked Jiwoo for taking care of him. Ziying returned to work at the police station, and the director immediately told Genmu to send her home so she could rest properly. Listening to the noisy rain outside the window, Ziying's heart felt incredibly calm. Xuandong asked Jiwoo if Ziying Jiejie had done something wrong to make him angry. Xuandong said that yesterday morning he had greeted Ziying Jiejie, but she walked away without replying. Xuandong hoped shocked. Jiwoo would not hold it against her. To him, Ziying Jiejie was as good as a grandmother. If she had done something wrong, it must not have been intentional. Hearing this, Jiwoo admitted it was actually his own fault. He had planned to apologize to Ziying, but instead ended up making her upset. Wenyan Xuandong immediately pulled out his phone and dialed Ziying's number. Before Jiwoo could even speak, they heard that Ziying had been in a car accident. Seeing Ziying unconscious in the crash, Jiwoo was frantic, desperately trying to smash the car window to save her. The scene reminded him of the time when his father had been in a car accident. It had also been raining heavily then. A man had smashed open the car window to save Jiwoo, and that man had been Ziying's father. At the time, Jiwoo had been completely stunned, his expression vacant. Fortunately, even back then, Ziying was a warm-hearted person. Jiwoo sent Ziying to the hospital and stayed by her side the whole time. But when Ziying awoke from unconsciousness, she only saw Shangxian, though she vaguely remembered it was Jiwoo who had saved her. Only then did Shangxian have to admit to himself that Ziying truly cared about Jiwoo. Luckily, Ziying was not seriously hurt, and soon Shangxian helped her out of the hospital. This scene was coincidentally seen by Jiwoo sitting in his car, and ripples of emotion arose in his heart uncontrollably. The next day, Ziying came to the clinic wanting to thank Jiwoo in person, but today was the anniversary of his parents' death. Early that morning, he had already gone to pay respects, so Ziying could only leave in disappointment. Yet fate always brought them closer. On the way back, the two finally met again, but regrettably, before Jiwoo even had the chance to greet Ziying, he received an urgent house call request, and once again they had to part. As soon as Jiwoo left, Shangxian drove up in a tractor. He was heading to Machingli for a meeting. Every time there was a meeting, Aunt Ma and Aunt Wu would always quarrel, fighting endlessly. This time he wanted to bring Ziying along. After all, since Ziying was a policewoman, with her present for the sake of the police's face, the two sides should not dare to escalate into violence. Clearly they had been overly optimistic about what would happen, but when Ziying arrived at the meeting, she ended up becoming the scapegoat. During the quarrel, Aunt Ma insulted her several times, saying that from childhood she had been an ill-mannered child without parents. After the argument ended, Ziying sat alone in the courtyard, in a daze. Every time someone called her an orphan, she felt deeply hurt. Those words always struck a fragile place in her heart. Ziying refused Shangxian's company. She wanted to walk alone, quietly. At this time, Jiwoo arrived at Grandpa Pingji's home. The yellow ox that had accompanied him for 30 years had reached the end of its life. Grandpa knew it could no longer be cured and wanted Jiwoo to put it to sleep so that it wouldn't have to suffer too much when it passed. Born as livestock, it had been used its whole life. Grandpa wanted it to leave without pain. When he was young, Grandpa had once posted 100 pictures online, with each picture containing a word, like tracing the route across the Aisho River from South Africa. In Jiwoo's time of memory loss, Grandpa had given things related to Ziying to Jiwoo before leaving. He said that when a man and a woman were together, naturally they would visit often while traveling, and the two of them must get along well. At that moment, Jiwoo finally realized that Ziying was the girl who had accompanied him when his parents passed away, the one who had pulled him out of grief when he was overwhelmed by sadness. Back when Jiwoo was 12, he had once given her a notebook, saying he would definitely return. Time passed for a long while. Jiwoo had never forgotten this matter, but he hadn't known that the girl was actually the grown-up Ziying. Now he finally understood why Ziying always said strange things to him, why she always wanted to be close to him. Jiwoo said he was very sorry that he only recognized Ziying now. Ziying said she could understand why Jiwoo had forgotten. Back then, it was because of his parents' death that he came here. That period of time must have been very unhappy for him, perhaps the memory he most wanted to erase, but in truth, it was exactly the opposite. Jiwoo now realized that in his heart, those memories were actually the most beautiful time of his life. After Jiwoo learned Ziying's true identity, he waited early at the door, calculating the time for when she would send Xuandong to school, hoping to create an encounter. But he waited for a long time, and Ziying never appeared. At the clinic, he learned that Xuandong was already on summer vacation. Xuandong came with his girlfriend to find Jiwoo, saying that her rabbit was sick and hoped Jiwoo could treat it. After examining, Jiwoo found that the rabbit wasn't seriously ill. It was just that the two children seemed to have had a quarrel. It turned out Xuandong and Xiyuan were secret friends in the first grade. Xiyuan had once given Xuandong a book as a gift, but Xuandong had completely forgotten about it. Xiyuan was angry and refused to talk to him anymore. After learning the situation, Jiwoo gave Xuandong a suggestion. He told him not to talk to Xiyuan for now and just wait a little. He said that sometimes girls only need to calm down and then their anger will fade. If you keep chasing after her and talking non-stop to appease her, it might only make things worse. Hearing this, Xuandong thought it made sense. Recently, whenever he tried to talk to Xiyuan, she just glared at him. So he decided to follow Jiwoo's method and give her some space. Sure enough, according to Jiwoo's method, Xiyuan now not only didn't glare at him, she wouldn't even look at him at all. Ziying then told Xuandong that since he already knew where he was wrong, he should apologize sincerely and keep apologizing until he earned her forgiveness. He should let her see his true heart instead of using cold violence. This was originally a very simple matter, not complicated at all. Yet, with Ziying and Jiwoo's combined efforts, Xuandong and Xiyuan ended up completely breaking apart. Xuandong's alternating cold and warm behavior made Yuan feel like he had a dual personality, so she decided never to play with him again. Hearing this, Jiwoo gave him another idea. idea. Good idea, Jiwoo said. Since that's the case, then make it even harsher. He told Xuandong to tell Siwon that he would listen to her and disappear from her sight forever. Anyway, it was summer vacation now, so they wouldn't meet. Based on his own experience, if Xuandong disappeared from Siwon's sight for a long time, she would definitely care and take the initiative to forgive him. Jiwoo told Xuandong he must be patient and absolutely must not listen to Ziying's advice about apologizing again. Xuandong thought it made sense. After all, Jiwoo had once said that he had a girlfriend while Ziying had never had a boyfriend. He figured he should listen to someone with experience. But even though Jiwoo and Ziying now knew each other's true identities, their relationship did not grow closer. Instead, when they met, they became even more distant. Shangxian also couldn't understand why they were like this. Then Shi Yuan went to Jiwoo and said that after Xuandong had told her a lot of strange things, he suddenly disappeared. Jiwoo immediately rushed to the police station to file a report. The village chief mobilized the entire village to search for him. Yet even at this point, Jiwoo still thought there was nothing wrong with the method he had taught. He believed Xuandong had already done enough. Since apologizing didn't work, then the only option was to act abnormally, forcing Siyuan to notice him. But Ziying believed that in love, it wasn't about how much you gave meaning, you should receive the same in return. Playing hard to get was not a clever strategy. Just then, the station chief called Ziying to say that someone had reported seeing Xuandong. The two immediately rushed over. Sitting in the car, Jiwoo felt that what he had just said was inappropriate and that he should also apologize to Ziying. Back then, he had suddenly left without saying goodbye properly. Now, even after Ziying had long recognized him, he hadn't recognized her in time, and out of pride, he couldn't bring himself to apologize directly. Ziying told Jiwoo that maybe his method wasn't wrong, but it just wasn't suitable for a 9-year-old child. After all, nothing made people more anxious than something that suddenly disappeared. Soon, the two of them found Xuandong trapped by a game of Go at the bus stop and safely brought him home. Jiwoo finally gathered up his courage and spoke his heartfelt words. Jiwoo went to Machingli to examine the cattle, but nearby an aunt was saying that a few days ago Aunt Ma had again cursed Ziying, saying she was without father or mother and had no upbringing. Hearing this, Jiwoo naturally felt upset. Just then, Aunt Ma came rushing to Jiwoo, asking him to look at her mother's dog. That dog was very important to her mother, but now it was seriously ill. Because her mother's home was in a remote location, no doctor was willing to go. Seeing how anxious she was, Jiwoo said that he had too much work here and didn't have time, refusing her request. But Ziying then spoke up, saying that she knew a shortcut that could save a lot of time. Hearing this, Jiwoo immediately pulled Ziying aside and asked if she didn't hate Aunt Ma. She had said so many hurtful things to her. He was refusing to help Aunt Ma because he wanted to stand up for Ziying, to vent her anger. Hearing this, Ziying directly dragged Jiwoo into the car. She understood that Jiwoo was worried for her. Once upon a time, Jiwoo had sworn firmly that dogs were innocent, and even if they committed wrongs and were injured, they still deserved treatment. But now he was willing to change his principles for the sake of his own grievance naturally made Ziying happy inside. She told Jiwoo that although Aunt Ma was two-faced and occasionally spoke harshly, her nature was actually not bad. They arrived at Grandma's house, and Jiwoo examined the dog. Fortunately, it was nothing serious, but on the return trip, trouble came. Their car had a flat tire. The repairman told them it would take some time to fix, and if they were bored, the sea was just ahead and they could go watch the waves. Ziying apologized to Jiwoo, saying it was her fault for making decisions on her own, which led to this unexpected situation and wasted his valuable time. But Jiwoo said it was thanks to Ziying that he could see this scenery. To be in an unexpected place with an unexpected person brought him joy. Their relationship grew closer. Just as they were looking at each other with affectionate eyes, unexpectedly, an ex-girlfriend suddenly appeared. Appa, who is this person? What are you doing here? Appa, I missed you. Faced with the scene before her, Ziying could only politely excuse herself and leave. At this moment, she thought that Kui Ming really was Jiwoo's girlfriend, and her heart couldn't help but feel a little lost. At first, Jiwoo didn't know why Zhao Ming had come here until he returned to the clinic and saw Runju, who should have been in Seoul. It turned out that before coming here, Runju had uploaded a video about Jiwoo onto social media. He hadn't expected that Xiao Ming would be one of his subscribers, and her purpose for coming here was obvious: to get back together with him. I've never seen a woman who can speak her intentions so directly, Jiwoo thought. She even firmly believed that she would be able to win Jiwoo back within a week. She told Jiwoo that the village had already arranged a homestay for him, and he would be staying there tonight. That homestay happened to be Ziying's house. When the aunties saw Jiwoo and Xiao Ming appear together, they thought Xiao Ming was Jiwoo's current girlfriend. They joked that they would give Jiwoo some of their family's secret medicinal wine so the two of them could reminisce properly. Jiwoo was about to clarify, but Xiao Ming immediately cut him off. The aunties were very satisfied with Xiao Ming and showered her with endless praise. Jiwoo didn't even have a chance to interrupt, his eyes full of helplessness. Ziying could only force a polite but awkward smile, not knowing where to look. Fortunately, at that moment, Shangxian arrived and helped Ziying out of the situation. Standing together, Xiao Ming assumed that the two of them were a couple. After the crowd dispersed, Shangxian said that Jiwoo's girlfriend really missed him so much that she even came all the way here to see him. Jiwoo replied that Xiao Ming was not his girlfriend and that he didn't have a girlfriend. Then turning to Shangxian, he said it lightly on the surface, but underneath the words were sharp and pointed. Meanwhile, Runjong didn't seem to disapprove of Xiaoming's actions. Back then, Xiaoming had gone abroad because of company work and was forced to break up with Jiwoo. From Runjiang's understanding of Xiaoming, getting back together wasn't some sudden idea. She would definitely do what she said. If it had been him, he would have chosen without hesitation to reconcile with Xiaoming. But what Jiwoo cared about most at this moment was only Ziying. The most important thing now was how he could free himself from Xiaoming. Ziying told Shang Xian that she truly admired Xiaoming. She was very brave, very positive, and very beautiful. She was really remarkable. Yet this overlapped with the fact that Jiwoo had just told Ziying that he and Xiaoming had long broken up. But right after, Xiaoming told Ziying that she would definitely win Jiwoo back again. They had once been lovers during their university days. That relationship was the one he had ruined, and now he deeply regretted losing Jiwoo. He hoped Ziying would help and encourage him. At that moment, Ziying didn't know how to respond to Xiaoming, whether she should help Xiaoming or think of herself. Xiaoming came to the veterinary clinic, where Xuandong had already been waiting for a long time. Although the whole village said Xiaoming was Jiwoo's girlfriend, Xuandong refused to believe it. He said Jiwoo often stared at Ziying, and whenever something happened to her, he immediately rushed to save her. Xuandong believed Jiwoo definitely liked Ziying. That meant winning Jiwoo back would be more difficult, but Xiaoming did not intend to give up. When he learned Jiwoo was going to examine the newborn calf, Xiaoming insisted on going with him. Their working together was seen by Ziying, and a sour feeling surged in her heart. Xiaoming said the scene reminded him of their university days when he and Jiwoo were always together, inseparable. Just then, the aunties called asking Ziying to find a few helpers to make peach wine. Jiwoo volunteered to go. During the process, Ziying deliberately avoided Jiwoo's gaze. To break the awkwardness, Xiaoming deliberately brought up Shang Xian. He asked Ziying whether Shang Xian was very popular. Ziying said yes. In childhood, every girl in the class liked Shang Xian, and she was no exception. She said Shang Xian was actually her first love. Following the thread, Xiaoming asked if, since Ziying and Shang Xian had been together for so long, maybe Shang Xian would end up being her final love. Hearing this, Jiwoo couldn't sit still. He said, "Just because you briefly liked someone as a child, does that mean he could be your last love? Then I could also be your last love. Back when we were children, we also got along very happily." As soon as he said this, the atmosphere immediately became awkward. Only then did Xiaoming realize that Jiwoo and Ziying had known each other before. He said Jiwoo looked at Ziying with unusual intimacy. At first, he had worried Jiwoo liked Ziying, but now he thought Ziying was only like a younger sister he had met here. Soon after, the aunties called Xiaoming into the house. Jiwoo then noticed Ziying was intentionally avoiding him. He pressed her, asking how she had replied to Shang Xian's confession. Ziying didn't answer directly, only saying Jiwoo should treat Xiaoming well. They could help each other at work, and when they returned to Seoul, they could still see each other often. After all, Xiaoming was excellent, but Jiwoo told Ziying that he and Xiaoming were already in the past. No matter how good Xiaoming was, he had no attachment and no regrets about her. The reason he hadn't spoken up was because he knew Xiaoming too well. No matter what he said, Xiaoming would always do what she had already decided, so he could only wait for Xiaoming to give up on her own. Jiwoo then asked Ziying if she would date Shang Xian. He said being familiar and being in love were not the same. Ziying said that being with Shang Xian was indeed a feeling of familiarity, but when she was with Jiwoo, her heart beat faster and made her uneasy. Jiwoo told her that is the feeling of love. Just as the two of them were about to pierce the thin veil between them, the aunties' voices suddenly called out and interrupted them. In the end, Ziying rejected Shang Xian's confession. She felt that giving Shang Xian a prompt answer was the only way to show respect. But even so, Jiwoo still thought about it for a long time. The longer he delayed, the harder it was for him to give an answer. Shang Xian always greeted him with a smile, knowing him better than he knew himself. Jiwoo was afraid Shang Xian would be hurt, afraid their relationship could never return to what it once was, afraid that he would regret his own choice. As he spoke, tears dripped down one by one. But Shang Xian said that even if they could not be lovers, he would not leave. Even if it was not romantic love between a man and a woman, they still loved each other. Even if his heart suffered a little pain, he would always stay by Ziying's side to accompany her. Then Shang Xian, with a silly smile, told Ziying that if someday he fell in love with another girl, she must not regret it. The next morning, Xiaoming was already waiting at the clinic entrance. Jiwoo told Xiaoming that even if he stayed here for a week, they could never return to the past. Jiwoo knew clearly that Xiaoming's feelings for him now were not love, but just regret for the beautiful times they had left incomplete. Jiwoo told Xiaoming that he now liked someone else. That person had appeared and was by his side. Xiaoming admitted he was being willful. He only missed the Jiwoo who once stayed affectionately by his side. Now it seemed it was time for him to leave. Jiwoo went to the police station but did not see Ziying. Shang Xian asked Jiwoo if he had any brothers, if his body had any problems, any family medical history, whether he had savings or if he had a house in the city. Jiwoo said yesterday Shang Xian's behavior was like that of a love rival, but now he was acting like an older brother. Jiwoo then realized Ziying had already given him an answer. Shang Xian said, seeing Jiwoo like this, it was clear that soon he too would hear Ziying's answer. Then he handed Jiwoo a pair of gloves. Since he was waiting for Ziying anyway, he might as well help while waiting. Jiwoo removed the bags from the peaches. The once green, unripe peaches were now about to ripen. Thinking of the times he had worked busily together with Ziying before, a smile appeared on his face. When Ziying saw Jiwoo, she hurried away. Jiwoo immediately chased after her and, without hiding it anymore, confessed his feelings directly. Ziying told Jiwoo he was mistaken. She said she was just happy to see her childhood playmate from Shangxian's side, and, meeting often, she had confused herself. But Jiwoo said he was very sure. The one he liked was not the 12-year-old girl, but the 27-year-old grown woman, Ziying. Yet Ziying said that for her, Jiwoo was still that 13-year-old boy. The boy who had given her a puppy and then left. No matter how foolish she was, she would never like Jiwoo again. But in her heart, she knew. The more she said she did not like him, the more she actually did. On her way back, Ziying met Bushai from the clinic. He told her that the old director, worried about Jiwoo, would soon return. That meant Jiwoo would be leaving soon, and this undoubtedly made Ziying's heart start to panic. When Ziying returned home, Xiaoming had already left. Before leaving, he told Ziying that he understood he had been overconfident, thinking Jiwoo only saw her as a substitute. But in the end, the one embarrassed and humiliated was himself. At that moment, Ziying felt as though a knot in her heart had been untied, and she no longer hid her feelings. She told Xiaoming she liked Jiwoo. All the times she had said she didn't care, they were lies. After Xiaoming left, Ziying got on her bicycle and rode quickly to the clinic. She could no longer control her true feelings. The young couple had just confirmed their relationship. For their first date, they drove the whole night. To avoid being discovered by the villagers, Jiwoo drove 4 hours with Ziying to Seoul for a date, ate a simple crepe, and then drove 4 hours back to Sidong. His back didn't ache, his legs didn't hurt. When at work, Ziying's behavior was completely different from usual. The tireless, ever-available Miss Workhorse now actually said she wanted to leave work early. After a while, Jiwoo. They rushed into the police station, using the excuse that the dog food for Guoba had arrived and asking Ziying to go home to open the door. In reality, the two of them were secretly hiding in the car being affectionate. Luckily, Xuandong arrived in time. Otherwise, the two of them would have already kissed. It turned out Xuandong had good news to share with them. Sayuan had agreed to be his girlfriend, and the two of them were now officially dating. He specially came to give Jiwoo and Ziying wedding candies as thanks to the two beautiful people, and he hoped they would keep his secret, making sure not to let the adults in the village know. Otherwise, there would be big trouble. Ziying sighed that even 9-year-old children instinctively knew how dangerous it was to make a relationship public in the village. She couldn't help but worry about how they would face the auntie's endless gossip if their own romance was exposed. But love, after all, was a happy thing. Very soon, Ziying began to notice her own changes. That afternoon, Aunt Ma came again to ask Ziying for help. Speaking recklessly, she said that people like Ziying, who lacked love since childhood, just enjoyed being asked for help. This drew the scolding of fifth aunt and 2 others. Unexpectedly, Ziying said that in the past, she did indeed like being asked for help, but today, with Aunt Ma asking her, she felt unhappy. Before, she always worried that if people disliked her and thought she was useless, what would she do? But now she felt that even if people disliked her, she didn't care. Today, she would still help Aunt Ma, not to please her, but out of respect for the elderly and care for the young. After saying this, she turned and left with dignity. After work, Jiwoo waited by the roadside near the orchard, and together he and Ziying had dinner in town. To avoid drawing attention, they entered the restaurant one after the other, pretending to meet by chance. After dinner, the two decided to do something meaningful, so they went to the orchard to cheer up the single dog, Shangxian. Although Shangxian felt force-fed by their dog food, he was still happy for Ziying and wished her everlasting happiness. On their way home, they unwrapped the candies Xuandong had given them, filling their mouths with the taste of childhood. Jiwoo stared at Ziying without moving his gaze, and lost in the moment, he unconsciously kissed her. Jiwoo then invited Ziying to the movies for their first official date. To avoid running into acquaintances, they booked the earliest screening. But Jiwoo suddenly received a call. Uncle Lee's cow was about to give birth. They had to postpone the tickets to the afternoon. Then, in the afternoon, a neighbor's senile grandmother went missing, and they had to reschedule the tickets again to the evening. It was only after nightfall that Ziying finally escorted the lost old lady safely back home. Afterwards, the station chief insisted on treating Ziying to dinner as a reward. She couldn't refuse, but after just one bite, she wanted to leave. Unexpectedly, she ran into the troublemaking drunkard Juerzi. Their date was delayed again and again. Frustrated, Ziying gulped down 2 sips of the strong wine. Meanwhile, Jiwoo was still waiting with full anticipation. Just then, one of the aunties happened to come out. Jiwoo had already thought of how to explain the situation if things got complicated. At this moment, Ziying finally arrived late, but instead of paying attention to anyone else, she rushed directly inside and used the village loudspeaker to announce to everyone that she was in a relationship with Jiwoo. Even the village dogs were woken up by her voice. The aunties all said they had known for a long time that the two of them were the villages. The aunties all said there was no need to make such a public announcement, but that the two of them looked so cute together, and Jiwoo was so handsome. At this moment, Ziying felt a little regretful, saying they should have told everyone earlier. In just a few days, Jiwoo would return to Seoul, and they wouldn't be able to see each other often. Yet here they were, still hiding and sneaking around, wasting time until it was already the middle of the night. Saying this, Ziying suddenly had a bold idea. She said from now on, they shouldn't do things like this anymore. Just as Jiwoo suspected, Ziying took flower petals and made a special mark on Jiwoo's ring finger, so that from now on, whenever anyone saw it, they would know that he already belonged to someone. Not long after, Jiwoo returned to Seoul, but both of them worried about disturbing each other's work, so their phone calls became noticeably fewer. During one video call, Ziying accidentally discovered that Jiwoo's arm had been injured for several days, yet she was only finding out now. She scolded him for not telling her earlier, making her feel like someone who didn't even know her own boyfriend was hurt. At the same time, she worried about Jiwoo being in Seoul without anyone to take care of him. Frustrated, she hung up the call. At that moment, Runju told Jiwoo that if he always feared affecting the other person and reduced contact, their love would fade. Being in love meant occasionally troubling the other, letting them worry. Shangxian told Ziying the very same thing, adding that if she was worried about Jiwoo, then she should just go see him. So Ziying borrowed Shangxian's car and drove all the way from Sidong to Seoul, while Jiwoo himself drove from Seoul back to Sidong. Truly, a love that runs both ways is the most moving. Jiwoo even drove 4 hours back to Seoul without resting. A few days later, Shangxian told Ziying that he had already scheduled vaccinations for Guoba's puppies and that the director was waiting at the clinic. So Ziying brought little Guoba there, but instead of meeting the director, Jiwoo appeared in front of her. It turned out Jiwoo had given up everything in Seoul for her and had decided to inherit his grandfather's veterinary clinic. At that moment, he noticed the color mark on Ziying's finger had already faded. So Jiwoo took out a ring he had long prepared from his pocket, and with it, he confessed his love. And with this heartfelt confession of love, the story also comes to an end.